Our today's theme is sensible living in the chaotic world. And for that, we have our speaker, Sister Els, with us. And Els' background, she's graduated from the University of Antwerp with a degree in Social Education Care. Also, she has extensive experience in leadership and management in career spanning over 30 years, and she has been practicing and teaching Raj Yoga over 40 years. So it's just over to Els now. Thank you.
So good evening and a very warm welcome. A small group, but it's nice to meet you all. I haven't been in Wembley for some time now, but it's always very nice to be here. So the topic that we're going to look at today is sensible living in a chaotic world. And what are we going to look at is, we all know that life has become very intense. And there are so many daily challenges, not only in our personal life, but also our working life, society, the community, our families, etc. So what are the tools and techniques maybe that we can develop or look at how to deal with those challenges, how to deal with that chaotic world and yet have a sensible life? And let's, for example, look at what I would like to look at with you today is, do we still have control in this chaotic world? Some people are saying there's no control at all. Everything is happening outside of my world, and that is very difficult because you feel that you lose the control, the order in your life. So that's a question we can explore. But also, I think what's more important is how to build coping mechanisms. What can I do in my own life to deal with that chaos for which I probably have very little or no control? And then when we talk about coping mechanisms, we're definitely going to look at resilience. How can I build that inner resilience that will help me? And then, of course, one of the things which I think is also very important, self-awareness through self-understanding. Do I understand myself? Can I raise that awareness? Can I probably look at some spiritual principles which will help me on that journey? Now, as you all know, uncertainty has become the norm, and I particularly like this picture because it gives you the feeling that it's chaos. You just don't know which side to go. Do you go straight? Do you go left? Where do you end? You have no idea. And it's very interesting how Forbes described that as we're living in a new world. We're living in a world of uncertainty, which seems to have become the norm now. And if you look at this picture, this was actually during the pandemic. This is a photo of an airport, I think it was in Ahmedabad, where they were conducting a stress management course. And basically, international airport, or it's Chandigarh. And you can see that, and you remember those days that we had to keep that distance amongst ourselves. We had to wear masks. I remember going to the supermarket. You probably all remember having to queue, having to stand outside with, 2 meters between each person. And then only when the next 50 or 60 people had done their shopping, then the next batch of people, as it were, could go in. So it's a completely different world. And again, here a photograph where you can see people wearing masks. Again, this is India and the distance that they have to keep among themselves. So life has changed. I think we probably all agree to that. And we are facing challenges we have never seen before. we need to learn to adjust to a very fast changing world. Now, when we talk about this feeling, have we lost control? If we look at, for example, the first thing that's probably on many people's minds is climate change. And climate change, if you look into the details, if you look into statistical data, it's actually a bit scaring. If you can see how the greenhouse gases, the CO2 emission in the atmosphere is increasing, and although the United Nations in 2015 drafted this 17 principles of sustainable development, the last meeting I saw on YouTube was that they have the feeling they're very, very far away from the target they want to reach, because they want to reach 2030 to get to below 2% of emission. And it's very hard for all those people who have signed that contract or that agreement to reach that. So we can see changing weather patterns, we can see storms, we can see fire. So many things are actually happening in that whole area of climate change. And then, of course, also we all know economic situation is very unstable. You can have a job today, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And a lot of unpredictable situations are coming our way. There's also the pandemic that we talked about, and unfortunately a lot of global conflict at the moment, a lot of tension in the world. And then the personal challenges, and that can be anything from health problems, financial problems, divorce, a moving house, so all the things that create stress in our lives. And what I personally feel is that there's an overwhelming choice. We are actually bombarded with information, not only via social media, but your own email inbox. I don't know how many emails you get on a daily basis, but it's overwhelming. We just can't keep up with the information that's coming our way. So very overwhelming, and that in itself creates stress. And then also, of course, countries are getting richer, and that's fine. We want to erase all the poverty from the world. But the downside to that is also that there's more consumption of goods and of services, which creates its own problem. And technology, I don't know if any of you are working in an IT or IT industry, but technology, we're now looking at AI, artificial intelligence, which is taking over the world. I find it very convenient if I have to write an article. I just go to the ChatGPT and they write this article for me in less than, 10 seconds or something. It goes very fast. And that's all very convenient and very helpful. But the downside is also that we are becoming very dependent on this technology. And if anything goes wrong with the system, then we probably are in trouble. And then, of course, social media, so lots of information, lots of useful information, let's also add that, but also there's a lot of spam, a lot of unnecessary information out there. So we're definitely losing control in that area. Now, what do we mean by sensible living? Sensible living means actually that we're going to go and reflect on our own lives. What is my lifestyle? Can I go to more simplicity? Can I look at, for example, techniques such as mindfulness, positive affirmations? So can I learn to set boundaries in my own life? Okay, I have my job, I have to do my daily work, my family, everything, but can I reflect on it? What is not needed in my life? So can I go to more sensible living, simplicity, moderation? And I think it's very important to also reflect on how can I align all of that with my own inner values. I, for example, have a colleague at work, and he said he left his last job because he did not agree anymore with the values of that company. And that in itself for him was enough to just leave the company. Or another example, a friend of mine who worked in the healthcare, the company forced her to go for the vaccination in the pandemic. She didn't agree, so she had to go for a hearing, a formal panel, where she was challenged because she did not agree with that policy, which was a company or health policy, and so she left her job for that. So it depends, choices we have to make on a regular basis, but if it's not in alignment with my values, I probably will need to look at it and see what I want to do. And here is another definition, sensible living, taking a step back. Again, the word reflection comes up, making conscious choices. We all have the ability to say yes or no. If I go to a shop and you go to a shopping center and there's so much very beautiful things, clothes and items, but do I have the conscious decision to say, do I really need this or not? Do I need this extra pair of shoes or maybe not? So the whole idea of recycling, rethinking, and I think that becomes more and more important in our lives. Not to be distracted or attracted, or I don't know what the word is, by all the material goods that are around us everywhere. The whole marketing industry is, of course, very clever in making us buying things that we actually don't need. So sensible living is also like, do you really need that last mobile, or can you just still work with your previous version? Do I need all of that? My laptop is 3 or 4 years old, but it still works perfectly fine, so why do I need to upgrade it and spend money while this old one will have to be discarded or whatever? And I think also there is something which is called cyclic thinking. And cyclic thinking means that whenever you buy a product, that we have to understand there is the material, the raw material came from a particular source. There was a transport to a plant or manufacturer, then another transport, then the shop, then the customer. So the whole journey of that one particular good that you bought that you probably didn't need, how much has that added to emission and to whatever. So a lot of things we can think about and we can reflect about. But also, I think it's very important to build that inner resilience. And I want to spend a bit more time on that. What is it that we can bring in our lives that will help us to go to a more simple life, but also to deal with the chaos around us so that we're not affected that much by that chaos, by those vibrations. And so, of course, another interesting message, don't give up, because we probably all have sometimes the feeling that it's just too much. I can't handle this anymore. I can't cope with it. Too much noise in the street, too much noise at work, too much workload, all of that. So how are we going to deal with all of that? So what I would like to do is I would like to talk about particular powers, and these are we talk about 8 powers that they teach you in the Raja Yoga course, and some of them I find quite interesting, so I would like to walk you through those. And the first thing, and I like particularly that picture, because you see it's chaos, isn't it? It's really chaos there. And so can I handle the chaos around me? And that means the power to tolerate is I need patience, definitely. I need maturity, and I need understanding. And it's not easy. You know, you go to an airport and you have to, run for your flight or the boarding or whatever, and there's so much going on around you, and you have to be very focused, not to be distracted, make sure you go to the right gate, you get your flight, all of that. So even though there's chaos, I have to just be very calm, mature, patient. So that's the power to tolerate. Tolerance basically also means that I am able to set my boundaries. I'm not going to tolerate anything just like that. That needs to be very clear. And then the other one is to adjust. And again, you can see in this picture that it's better to bend than to break. No? Do you agree? Better to bend than to break? So I probably, I feel very often that you just have to go with the flow. No, you're at an airport and they tell you your flight is cancelled. So what can you do? If you become angry or frustrated, very normal response probably, but we're not going to change that situation. We have to adjust. And probably this is a very important skill or technique or understanding that more and more, when we live in that chaotic world, we have to develop that power to adjust. And that means accept whatever is happening around you because you have no other choice anyway. Go with the flow, bend but do not break. Power of adjustment. And then the power to decide, and again, probably very important to reflect on that. When am I going to say yes? When am I going to say no? So can I take the right decision? And I think it's very important to understand that I need to be very clear myself whether I'm going to sign this contract or not. Do not be influenced by other people. And they often say, I don't know whether you've heard this before, but they often say that if you have to take a major decision in your life, it's best to do that early in the morning, when your mind is still fresh, when you're clear, when you're not influenced by other people. So a clear and stable mind. And then basically take the decision. It can be something minor, it can be something major. But once I've taken the decision, I also then have to accept the consequences. And in my own life, I remember a few times when I've taken a wrong decision, it had to do with a job. And the wrong decision, well, what is wrong anyway? But it was because I was influenced by a friend who said, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And I followed that guidance or advice, whatever the word is. And it turned out that it was the worst thing I could have done. And then, of course, it's a lesson. You can look back and you say, oh gosh, yes, now I understand. I should have followed my heart. Because my heart, my feelings were saying something completely opposite than what my friend suggested. And so these are all moments in our life. And okay, it happens. And you look back and you say, okay, I learned from it. Next time when I'm in a situation where I have to take a major decision, let me follow my heart or let me take an informed decision. Let me look at all the options. No one can force me to sign a contract or to do anything before I'm very clear that this is what I want to do. So I think that is a very important lesson, that clear and stable mind before we take major decisions. The power to face is another power, and basically it means that I need to learn to take my own responsibility. And that means courage. Courage is a very, very important element. I remember at a particular moment I was in London and I was in a challenging situation in the sense I had different choices to make. Not give up your courage. That with a lot of my whole courage. And that in itself. Is working now? Okay, okay. So basically, the whole thing about courage, what she said to me is my whole life is based on courage. And she said it with such feeling that I could really understand that this was the truth, what she was sharing. And it was something that really encouraged me to get through with the challenge that I was facing. And I, till today, remember those words. And it really helped me in that situation. So courage means not to give up. And assertiveness is another thing that we can think about. Assertiveness, there's something which we call non-aggressive assertiveness. And that has to do with communication skills. And that is probably one of the most difficult skills, if that's the word, to implement in our lives, communication. Because very often we misunderstand what someone else is saying and we take a conclusion out of that, or what I am saying is misunderstood by the other person. So there's lots of techniques that we can learn, like active listening and all of that. But non-aggressive assertiveness means that I do respond to the situation, but in a very respectful way. And I can give you another example. In my previous job, my previous employment, my head of the department had made a decision that I was absolutely not happy with. And I remember going into his office, and I was frustrated and I was upset. And I told him I do not want to go along with that decision. But he was very firm, and he told me, no, I have the final word. This is what we're going to do, whether you like it or not. And I remember when I spoke to a friend at home about the whole situation, she told me, but listen, Els, you have gone to your line manager, you were angry, you were upset, you were frustrated, and he has responded on your feeling, not on what you were saying. And then I thought, of course, I was in that state of mind, of course he was not going to listen to me. So what I did, I gave it some time. 2 weeks later, I prepared the meeting in my mind. I went back to him and I said, can we open this discussion again? But I had really worked on being peaceful, respectful, and then I thought, whatever the situation is now, I have to go along with it. And I again explained why I did not like the decision, but I came with another idea, another situation, which he said, yes, that's fine, we can go along with how you would like to do it, fine, just move ahead with this. And I was so surprised that all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, he completely changed his mind. But then I understood that that was actually the trick of speaking to the person, but in a very respectful way, but also very detached, and then to let go. So it's like that kind of communication skill that I speak to a friend or whatever it is, but with that understanding. So assertiveness. And then I think this is probably the last one in the list, the power to pack up. And again, probably something you all agree to, let go of the past. Yes? No? Let go of the past? So let go of the past means that I'm not suppressing my feelings or emotions, because that's not going to work. But it means that I look back at what happened, and at a particular moment I say to myself, now you have to let go, because otherwise we can't move on. But the thing, of course, is that I often have the feeling that you can't move on as long as there is unfinished business. So if I had an argument with a friend or with my parents or siblings, it's probably a good idea to go back and talk about it, if possible, and either say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done this, or I shouldn't have done that, or the other way around. I can say whatever you told me has really hurt my feelings. Can we talk about it? Let's go for a coffee or something. So, and then once things are clear, settled, then it's much easier to let go of the past. And then also the other thing, a big one, forgiveness. Do you agree? Important. 2 elements, forgiving the self and forgiving the other. Which one is more difficult? Which one, forgiving the self or forgiving the other?
I think the self.
The self is more difficult? No? The other is more difficult? So, different ideas around that. So, forgiving the self, forgiving the other. But very often they go together. If I can forgive myself and keep that love and understanding that this is why I made that mistake in the past, those were the situations, let me forgive myself, and the next step is then forgive the other who was involved. But depends on what it is. But forgiveness is very important. And be kind to yourself. Yeah? We need to really practice that kind of kindness, respect for the self, love for the self. So let's talk about the power of the mind. And I like this picture because it's the idea of what kind of seed are you sowing. So you want the flower or do you want the weed? It depends on the thoughts that I create. And of course it's easier said than done to think in a positive way, constructive way, we all agree. But the mind has its own life, as it were. Sometimes the mind is like a wild horse running around, jumping from one thought to the other. And I think that, of course, meditation is a very powerful practice to discipline the mind, but maybe that word discipline is not the right word. It's not about disciplining the mind, because then you use a kind of force, but it's about bringing another kind of thinking. And that's why kind of affirmations are so important. Change the pattern of the thinking, not by force, but by reflection and maybe the technique of affirmations. But we have to be aware that the thoughts are very powerful. The positive thoughts are a vibration. So if I talk to someone and I can speak very positive words and whatever I say to this person, but if in my heart I feel very negative about this individual, he or she will probably respond more on my thought than on what I'm saying. No vibration. So do you agree when I say that we actually communicate with each other on the level of vibration? Is that something you can feel or see? So that is so important to be aware of it. If I have a negative thought about someone, that vibration probably reaches that person. And then if this is a thought I have created over a long period of time, I've repeated the thought, it's a very deep pattern. And each time when I see this person, I have this rejection or whatever it is, this person is going to respond to me on the basis of my feeling and my thinking. So no wonder that this person pushes me away and says, I don't want to talk to you, I don't want to deal with you. And of course, because that's the vibration that they get from me. So if I do the opposite, if I have a thought of gratitude and respect for this person, whether a colleague or my friend or my family, and I practice that thought, no matter what happened in the past, I can now say, okay, my parents, maybe they made this or that mistake. For example, my own parents in Belgium, my mother was 15 when the Second World War broke out. 15. My dad was 11, he was a bit younger, 4 years difference between my parents. So basically, her whole teenage years, being the oldest of a family of 10 children, was in the war, and Belgium was heavily bombarded. And so you can imagine that kind of upbringing, how, when she then became a parent, a mother, how that influenced her as a parent, her parenting. So basically, if you have that understanding, and an outsider might say, your parents you're so strict with you, or this, that, but you see the whole picture, and then you say, now, of course I understand why they were so protective, because of what they had gone through. And so it's always very important before we get into any situation with any ideas or comments or whatever, try to see the whole picture. Try to see what that person has gone through. And sometimes you have no idea. So it's kind of, lesson to be careful with jumping to conclusions or judging someone or criticizing, because there's a reason why a person maybe acts in a particular way. So what seeds are we sowing? And so what I would like to do now is, we have looked at these kind of powers, and I would like to look at some practical tips. And these are some slides that we also use in the stress management courses. Practical tips to deal with stress, practical tips to deal with whatever challenges are coming in our lives. And the first one, I don't know whether you agree with that, but I often feel that a very powerful tool or system is to start to declutter your world. You know, going back to simplicity, moderation. So we probably have far too many things in our lives. And even if last weekend I cleared out my room and some of the attic, and the feeling you have after that, everything is clean, everything is tidy, it's amazing the calming effect it has on our minds. So cleanliness, no clutter, and also things that will help me like music, hobbies, and these things are so important because they can empower me. You know, if you're in a noisy shopping center, you come home and you're tired. At least I am. I'm exhausted. Because there's so much noise, so many people, so much distraction, but be in a very peaceful park or in the nature and you will feel very different. So music, hobbies, and learn to say no, learn to set boundaries. And I think we all have to do that more and more. And not only towards maybe my line manager who keeps adding tasks onto my to-do list, but again, in a very respectful way, talk to him about it or her. That, let's say, I'm happy to take on this project, but can I have more time of what I'm doing at the moment? Or at home, you know, with my husband, wife, children, parents. So again, communication comes into the picture. But I think the underlining word here is if you say no, I can do it in a very respectful way and explain. So that be very clear about why I would say no to something. That kind of transparency, I think, comes into the picture here. So that's one of the things, and this is probably something you expect to see on this list. Do you agree? Healthy diet? Yes. Exercise, our lifestyle. So there is, of course, there's a very strong link between our physical health and our mental health. We all know that. And so the more I can look after my physical health, the more it will also help me spiritually, mentally, to deal with that chaotic world. Exercise is so important, vital. Getting air, oxygen in our body, in our brain. And then, of course, that's one of the things, when I moved to the UK from Belgium in 2000, what I had to adjust to cultural changes, which was fine. But in the UK, there's such a network of support available. And they probably have it in Belgium now as well, but I've been away too long now to keep up with things there. But that is so important. So there is help available. So there is support. And then also wellness, spa, everything that can help us and get professional help if needed, why not? And then also practice this positive affirmations. So we'll do a short meditation at the end of the session, and then we can practice some of that. And then also look after yourself. I don't know how many of you in this room are regular meditators or practicing mindfulness or any of those techniques, but they're actually very, very powerful and very helpful. So this is a very interesting statement. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin was a French Jesuit and a French scientist. And he wrote this book, you can see the title there. And one of his famous statements is, we are not human beings with a spiritual experience, but we are spiritual beings with a human experience. That's something completely different. And that's actually something that we teach at Brahma Kumaris and that we practice in Raja Yoga, is that understanding of who am I really. Am I just this human body and my role and my labels and all of that, my profession, whatever, or who is at the core of my being? And I think that understanding of, we are the soul in a human body, not the other way around, I think that is very helpful. And especially when we explore that idea, it will help us so much to change the vision I have about myself. Because if I keep having these negative thoughts about myself, if I compare myself with others, if I'm critical, it's not going to help me. And I disempower myself rather than empowering myself. That's probably the problem with any negative thought. It's very disempowering. So that understanding is we are a spiritual being with a human experience. And also what we look at is, what do I mean by that word soul, Atma? So the Atma, the soul, is actually imperishable. The soul is energy, so it's non-physical, and that energy is eternal. So exploring that idea brings us into a completely different understanding of ourselves, but also of other people. And then basically, if we look at that idea, soul is free from any negativity in its pure, untouched state. So what does that mean? That means that originally there is actually no negativity in the soul. And it's probably very hard to believe when you see, the state of the world and our own struggles. But if you go to that intrinsic quality, you can say this is actually what the soul is. Pure energy, it's eternal, it's non-material, and it has originally, the original qualities they say in the soul is love, is peace, is wisdom, is purity, is kindness. This is intrinsic in all of us, in each soul. But of course, the life journey means that a lot of dust has been accumulated. And we have lost ourselves. We have lost that connection with our true self. And of course, in that state of mind, I'm also going to see other people only with their external roles. And that creates a lot of problems, I think. So that's the starting point, is who am I really? I think that is very important to look at. I think I probably have a few questions that I would like to ask you, and I don't know whether you have pen or paper. If not, something that I would like you to think about, what is it that brings happiness in your life now? What gives you happiness? Forget about the world, forget about the chaos. What is it that makes you happy? So you don't need to share it, but just for yourself, what brings happiness? And my next question is, can you remember a moment in your life when you stood up for someone or something? Just look back at your life journey and remember a moment when you were in a very difficult situation, was very challenging, and you did an amazing act of courage, of kindness, of help. What was it? Can you remember it? Because what often happens is we remember the negative things of the past, and we seem to forget all the good things we did in our lives, or all the good things my parents or my friends did. So try to go back to that moment and say, yes, that was very, very special. It was amazing. I managed, I did it. I helped that individual, or I helped whatever the situation was. So something you can take home and reflect on later on. And then my next question is, who is it that you admire? Who is your hero in your life and why? I think we all have a hero, no? So who is it and why? Because they often say that if you are attracted to a virtue or a speciality in someone else, you often have it yourself, but you don't realize it. That's why the question is about what is it that you admire in someone else, and that you don't realize that you have that quality yourself. And on the last question here, what music do you like? And what is your favorite book or movie that you have recently read or seen? And again, the question why? Yeah, so... Okay, so I have a few things, and they are reflections, and I really like these quotes. So, better to be an architect of my future than a prisoner of my past. Agree? Yeah. What happened when Nelson Mandela was released from prison in South Africa, 1991? Anyone read his the interview, his article? Yes? So he was for 27 years imprisoned in South Africa in Robben Island, an island which was quite far from the land, the whole sea around it infested with sharks. No way you could escape from that island, no way. 27 years in a very small cell, 4x4, even smaller. And when the reporter came to interview him, he asked Nelson Mandela, are you not angry and frustrated and bitter after all of this? Finally, they release you now. And Nelson was saying then, when I walked towards the gate to freedom, I realized at that moment, if I would keep that bitterness and hatred in my heart, I would stay imprisoned for the rest of my life. So he had such a wisdom, spiritual understanding that he had to let the past be the past. And then, of course, once he was released, he did such an amazing thing for South Africa. Because his original campaign, or the whole group, they were just working against apartheid. That was all. And he paid a heavy price for it. But that was so beautiful what he said after he was released. So here he is. You can read that statement from him there. Okay, so a few statements from Daddy Yankee, and who in this room has met Daddy Yankee? Oh, great. 4 or 5 people, great. You too? Wow, that is wonderful. So what did she say to you? What did Daddy say to you? Can you remember? This little girl in the room? What did she say? She said Om Shanti to you. That's beautiful. So Daddy, she passed away at the age of 104. And there's lots of quotes from her on the internet, and that's where I get them from. I read most of her books, but she's saying here, let me tell you the secret to living a long and happy life. Accept from the heart whatever comes in front of you. Be happy constantly and distribute happiness. So beautiful. And what I personally often felt meeting Daddy, she would speak from the heart, and you could feel she was living what she was saying. So she was walking her talk. Yes? I think there's a few more from Daddy. Never lose hope in life. Nothing in life is impossible. Very powerful statements. I remember often in classes she would say, never become disheartened. So no matter what's happening in our lives, no matter what's going on, keep hold on that hope, keep hold on to courage. And she would also often say, courage is like my companion in life, my friend. Yeah, courage. One more, yes, study. My happiness is my personal property from God. I won't let anyone or anything steal it. So, and that's probably the last one. Here is a challenge for you. Don't make small things big, but make big things small. So it's like that whole exercise of doing the opposite when it's very challenging. Let me not make it bigger than it is. And that's why often the help from a friend is so useful, because I'm so entangled in that situation that I don't see an outcome, I don't see the answer. But someone else who is a very good friend, has a bit more distance, can say, why don't you think about this, or why don't you think about that? And that kind of being more detached often helps to have that clarity. So make big things small. And so, oh, there's one more. Why speak when you can convey far more through silence? Power of silence. So we'll do a meditation at the end of the session. That's always my question answer. So basically, I think we have time now for questions. And I'm not sure whether there's going to be questions from the audience online or YouTube, or any questions you have. And then we can do a meditation together. So, living sensible in a chaotic world. Yes, I think there's probably a mic coming your way.
Hi. So, as you stated in your lecture, that in situation, sometimes, especially in the professional world, you don't get aligned with the thought process or the way they deal the situation. You feel disheartened, or your heart doesn't align with their thought process. Similar situation happened with me recently, and I would say today that whatever my company is doing, or the way they are dealing with employees, it's not actually aligning with my thought process or the way I like to be. Yeah. And you may be aware that in the corporate world, a lot of things are fake. And today I just attended some sort of this meeting, and it has given me headache and a lot of anger that you guys are just giving me fake, talks to everyone, or just this will happen, that will happen, and end of the day nothing happens. So it was about my appraisal, which have just made me really disheartened. But these are the sort of things which most of the service industries is doing right now. So how to manage yourself? Because I told similar thought process to my friend. He told me that this is how it is. This is the new normal. Get everywhere, do your best work, and still you get disheartened because they never appreciate what you do. And this is happening across the board. So how to deal with that?
I think the first thing is probably not to lose your self-respect. And that's quite crucial, because you can't, or maybe not, maybe you can, I'm not sure, you can't always change that culture. And if we're moving towards that kind of culture in the corporate world, it's very hard to go against the flow of things. But I think the very first step is to keep your self-respect at all times and at all cost. So it should not basically, and of course disheartenment is a very natural emotional response to that. But I think that is very important. And if there is someone higher up, but I'm not sure whether that's always possible, to discuss the matter, that could be an option. But if that's not possible, to just keep that awareness, who am I really, to keep that self-respect. And then maybe also look at your options. That's what I would say.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the group here? So it's a whole journey, I think, to actually come to the point where I can handle everything that's happening and still have that self-respect. And I think that's why meditation is such a powerful practice, also mindfulness, because it's actually stepping back from what's happening outside of me, which I often can't control anyway, but it's like going within, it's feeling, experiencing that peace within myself, which is very empowering. And that's actually the resilience that we need more and more. So we need to build that inner power, we need to build that inner strength. And that will help me to deal with the situation and also to take the right steps that I need to do. And sometimes I have no option than to stay in the situation. Sometimes I have the option to move on. And that's a decision I need to make, whether it's in the corporate world, in job, whether it's in family, whatever it is. But for that we need a lot of clarity of mind. And that's why, like I said, meditation, those practices, those techniques are important because they empower me. And the regular practice, the more I practice regularly, the more I will feel the benefit and the impact of that. So we can do a meditation together, and I'm just going to read some meditation commentary. And basically meditation usually goes in different steps, different stages as it were. But the first step is basically to focus the mind, because it's like almost impossible to blank the mind. The mind is always going to produce thoughts or memories. So I do not want to suppress the mind. Whatever the flow of thoughts is fine, but I'm going to very gently direct my mind in a different direction. So if we can just maybe just relax and don't hold on to anything, put your feet on the floor, and we probably have some music in the background. And then I'm just going to read meditation commentary. And the topic that I've chosen for this short exercise is letting go, freeing the mind. In the awareness of my physical identity, there are so many limits and restrictions. The customs and systems of the world, the expectations and demands of others around me, or my own desires and expectations of others. Many different things hold me in bondage. Some are visible, others are more subtle, but they pull my mind. They hold me back. They make me a prisoner. I need to learn the art of letting go. Letting go of the past. Letting go of any worry about the future. Let me experiment with I realize that these limitations are actually connected with the awareness of this physical body and the physical world. In meditation, I can move to another level of awareness. So I can speak to my mind and tell my mind to slow down. One thought at a time. Meditation is like an inward journey. Going within, I connect with the truth about myself. And on this inner journey, I feel that my true identity is being a soul. A soul is eternal and completely free from negativity in its pure, untouched state. And I can feel that peace within myself, that deep inner stillness, that silence. And I realize that this is who I really am. A soul, a spiritual being of light, that feeling of deep inner stillness brings a feeling of deep joy and happiness, and most of all, freedom. Free from anything that distracts my mind. Free from worry and pain, because I realize it will all be fine. It will all work out. So let me hold on to this awareness. I, the soul, completely still, completely peaceful. This is who I really am. So let me finish this short exercise with the greeting of peace. Om Shanti. Om I am Shanti, peaceful. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Els, for the wonderful talk and all the tools and tips given. Next week, is the Diwali celebration in here. So the theme for the Diwali is light, hope and happiness, same time, same place. And product of the week is the Making Sense, the book available in the shop, so you can browse through on your way out. Once again, thank you all for joining us, and thank you to our online viewers as well, and have a safe journey back home. Thank you.